Hello and welcome to the Gilbert and Singh podcast with me, George Gilbert, and my partner in crime, Mr. Jas Singh. So episode 10.
Big day.
Big 10 into double figures. So fantastic. So we'll move on from that. Strike the like button, hit subscribe, and come and join us on many podcasts to come. So the next guest is Nancy, a confidence catalyst.
That's
or
right.
Coach.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. So tell you what, give us a little bit of an introduction into you and the whole confidence thing, and then we'll just jive on the chat.
Absolutely. So what do you want me to tell you? How do I introduce myself? So I'm a confidence coach and a corporate trainer and author as well, which was just by accident. Created an ebook for a private group. And then it was just like, hey, let's put this on Kindle and Amazon. And it was like, oh, okay, I thought this was going to be private. So that kind of just happened.
Well, let's go right back then. So a confidence coach, your background, so you're from the States?
Yes.
Okay. Education in what? What did you get a degree?
Yes, yeah. I did. So I have my bachelor's and my master's in human resources. Okay. So that's what I did for 15 years. For 15 years, I did HR, and 8 of those years I had my own business. So I did that. And then I came out here and I was like, I don't want to do HR anymore. But I had already started doing the confidence coaching with groups in the States.
Right.
So the first group was like a group of financial analyst women. So we did it. It was just for fun though, like totally just for fun. Did the program, and a few of them started getting like higher end clients, and that's what they had like worked on during the program. So I was like, oh, this is really working. And then I did it to a group of like girls cheerleaders in San Francisco. And I was like, let me just check this out. Let me see if it works with younger girls. And guess what? Totally worked. They all like had breakthroughs. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm onto something. The thing is that I was doing that for free, but I loved it so much. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to do that as a business. Like I love doing this. And I was already incorporating it into the HR. Like when I would bring managers in, it was already coaching, but I just didn't realize what I was doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. The reason why I went with that question is I was curious to know where you come from and how, what made you want to do that from that perspective.
It was actually from a personal perspective, because you may see me now like this, but if you were to press rewind, you would be like, that is not the same girl. And so I had a lot of trouble.
That's what I'm interested to know is, have you always been a confident person?
Absolutely not.
Really?
No. Do you know the very first time where the traumatic moment happened? Nobody knew. I had signed up to do a pageant in the States, but it was for a scholarship because I'm like, my parents don't have money. I'll just do a pageant. Mind you, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I didn't have a talent. So the next best thing was you can do an essay. So
Brilliant.
Yeah. So with the essay, I memorized it. And then unfortunately, what I did was I doubted myself. So I took it to my English teacher. She changed it all. But this was the day before the event.
Right.
So when I got up on stage and I had to recite the essay in front of thousands of people.
Without the paper.
Without the paper.
And how long is this thing?
This is about 2 pages.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot. It was a lot. I went blank.
Right.
In front of, the lights went on and I just stared out and I'm like, oh my gosh. I ran off the stage crying. I got in big trouble from my mom backstage. Like, you made us spend all this money coming up here. And it was horrible. And I swore to myself, I would never put myself in a situation like that.
Is that a common thing? Is that a common thing in pageants for that to happen? Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, let me tell you. You said it's a common thing. So
no, I said, is it a common thing?
Yeah, it's such a funny thing, right? So you mentioned this story. I think I was in grade 5, 11 years old. I signed up for a singing competition, right? You've heard me speak, right? So
I've seen you dance as well. Not sing.
But I can dance.
Is it as bad?
Well, I can dance. That's a different story. I can do whatever you want me to do. That's fine. But 12 years old, So this is an assembly, because I used to be in a school. When you do school here, what they do is they do an assembly for the whole school. So grade 1 to grade 12, everyone's there. So I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I'm actually walking to the stage to cancel my name. Say, listen, I can't do this anymore. Right? So I'm walking to the stage, and all my friends are like, Josh, yeah, again, yeah, you've got this. I should let that get to my head. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna get on stage. I'm gonna sing a song. And this is before my voice obviously cracked. Do the nice little monotone
dulcet tones you have now. Oh,
right,
the confidence shining through there.
Right, so I went on stage, like literally what happened to you, panic, complete and utter panic, and I stopped. So you didn't say anything, you ran out crying. I wish I did that. Right? I tried singing, so it literally went, and I stopped. Right? You laughed. This is for an 11-year-old kid. All right. I walked out, and the principal goes, "Are you done? You sure? Do you want to go again?"
That's brutal.
Oh, that is.
All right. So I'm like, no, I'm cool. So
I find there's that barrier you've just got to get through. I was actually back in primary school. I was in the choir, and they wanted me to do the solos. These was like Nightingale in Berkeley Square and all that sort of stuff. You know, I had to just find myself like I was crapping my pants. But you get to the point where you're just like, go, and you've just got to break that barrier.
Well, that's the main part, right? So that's why I actually wanted to talk to you about. My first question was going to be this: is how do you cultivate that? Like let's go back to your story. What changed for you? I'm assuming this is when you went college. So,
well, 12 years old was that happened. But you know what? It's crazy because I said I'm never going to do this again. But something in me said, you need to do it again. So I signed up again when I was like 16. And I didn't care. I was like, all right, fine, I'll do it. But this time, got smart. I was in the church choir. So
yeah.
I said, you know, I can sing a song like quick and easy. So I said, but I don't want to use my voice. So I said, I'm going to sign language the song.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So I learned it from the choir teacher. And I was like, I'm not doing essays. I'm not doing that again. And nobody's going to know if I do that, you know, if I do the sign language wrong. So I'm like, let me just do that. But I did it and I got top 10. Didn't win, but my goal was to do it again, to face the fear and do it anyway. So that's something that I think that's how it started, cultivating that from such a young age, where anything that came in my way, I was like, okay, I need to get through this because I hate feeling that restriction where I cannot do something or go somewhere. So along the way, that's just, life has brought me to do that, where I'm just like, okay, I've never lived away from home, so then I'm going to do that. And so, you know, I moved away. Then you go through all the crap, all the BS, and then you learn from it. And then you're like, okay, that wasn't so bad. But I find myself doing that all the time.
Oh, brilliant. I mean, but it's such a hard thing to do though. You can't just up and get and go, I'm confident, right? You've got to act it. You've got to eat the thing. You've got to sleep the whole concept of being confident. And
what do you think the issue is? Do you think it's because people are too worried about what other people are going to think?
Oh my gosh. That is part of it. But I think the number one issue is you are not self-aware. Who are you? Right? So a lot of people use the outside, the title, what they have, their parents, or even partners, you know, they're like, oh, my husband's whatever. But it's like, if I were to put you, and I tell this to clients all the time, if I were to put you in a room and everything is gone, it's just you in the middle of a white room, who are you? Do you know so many break down because they cannot answer it?
Really?
They cannot answer the question because if they're moms, they just take on that identity. For gentlemen, if they've been a director or I'm the provider, they take on that title, but then that's all they know. But it's something from the outside. It's not something from the inside.
So, well, that's crazy. I actually want to, push on that a little bit more. The social identity that people create for you, where you go, just because you are born this way or you've been raised in this particular country, you have to act this way. It's because they put the pressure on you. You don't have to actually follow that particular identity that's been created for you, right? I forget, I was listening to someone earlier. he said this about Nelson Mandela. He said this about him. He's like, when he got on a plane, and the first person that he saw was a pilot, right? It was a black pilot, and he goes, "Oh, we can fly planes." Even him, who fought for 27 years and stayed in a prison, had that social identity in front of him. He did it, so he stopped him, from himself saying this. But there are people that actually come up to you and say, you're from this country, you shouldn't act like this. I see that. I'm Indian heritage, right? So I see this with my sister a lot, where you're like, oh, you're 25, you should be married now, you should learn how to cook. And these are constructs that we create for people.
We limit ourselves, and that's how it's created. Like a big part of it is like I'm Mexican, my background is Mexican, and it's the same thing. I'm like, I'm 25. I'm like, I want to just travel the world and live life. And it was like, when are you getting married?
Your biological
when
clock.
are you having kids? I'm like, I don't want them right now. But it was like such a bad thing. And like nobody said I went for my master's and I traveled, but nobody in the family ever was like, wow, that's really amazing. It was more like, oh, so-and-so has like 2 kids. Oh, and there's and you're like, oh my gosh, that comes from our background. Like, how did you get, just recently, my husband and I went to the Maldives. I had a cousin of mine message me and said, how did you do that? Like, how do you do that? How do you get to travel? How do you get to just live your life? And you know what I said to him? I messaged back and I was like, it's called curiosity and wonder. You have to wonder what is outside of my mind, because my mind is limited. So what is outside of that? Like, I wonder what it would feel like to be somewhere else. I wonder what it would feel like to be a CEO of an organization. Like, why not?
Right.
We limit ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is, coming back to the children's side of things and settling down, I think you're quite right. The problem is you're surrounded by a generation that is bringing up kids, and they're all thinking to themselves, well, okay, I go to work, I'll do 9 to 5, and then I come home, and then at the weekends I just go to the local dingy pub and have a drink, and what else are we going to do?
Yeah, but that's
we need to have a family. Yeah. But for me, because I started getting itchy feet back at home in Nottinghamshire, Robin Hood country there, and I thought I need to, I don't know, do city living. I need to get into a city. I need to be surrounded by like-minded people that, fast-paced, because I was from a small town, village, whatever you want to call it. And then when I got the opportunity to come to Dubai, I'm just like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not even ready to get married. I'm not even ready to have kids. I'm 34. But I think by the time I get to about 40, but right now I just want to be selfish. But we're very fortunate here. We're so exposed to different environments and cultures, and so I'm just thinking I just want to try everything. And then obviously we've got so many fantastic places that aren't far away from where we are in Dubai, like the Maldives. Love the Maldives.
I know, amazing. I had never even imagined being there. But it's the same thing. Like when I was there, I was like, oh my gosh, and this is what happens. And that's the energy of wonder and just curiosity. Doesn't mean it's just, you open up that little pathway that says, I just wonder what it would be like. And you start kind of imagining yourself in there and the feeling of it. And then it creates that next step.
One of the strongest words, one of my favorite words is why. Yeah, just why. Don't do this. Why? Because of this. Why? Go do that. Why? Just when you keep peeling that onion, right? Then that's when you get that sweet spot when you start crying, right? That's literally.
I'm sure your mom didn't appreciate that.
Or the crying part.
No, the why part.
Oh, the why part. No, so my mom. So that's the thing. Where I get this from is from my mom and dad. They again, like I said, Indian heritage, get married. But my dad said, no, I want to go Dubai. I want to work. I want to go back UK. I want to work. I want to do something, right? But same thing with my mom. So when my mom came, from India, right? So she's got a master's in English, but she had kids and she stopped, right? But my dad said, go and get this done, right? Go and get this. So this is for me, when I heard you on the webinar the first time, Confidence Catalyst, Dr. Nancy, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a person that I wish I could show to my relatives and be like, have a chat with them. All right, your daughter is not for marriage. Your son is not for your for your salary or for your expenses, right? So, but I actually want to go back to one of the things that you said. You said my mum kept saying, knock knock, TikTok, or my uncle or aunt, whatever. How do you go away from that? So that's in the no around you. How do you go to that confident person from that no? Because if you keep hearing that no again and again, it's not easy to maintain that level of confidence. So how do you?
It goes back to self-awareness. Right. So I started with, I got to coach myself. I was like, okay, I'm having, a little bit of an issue. So I need to figure out, how do I get out of this rut? Started. But from that, you start learning things about yourself. Why do I do things? Why? Like, why is it that I get angry when this happens? Why is it that when somebody confronts me about something, I restrict myself, or why can't I just speak up and say what I feel? Oh, because I'm scared. What am I scared of? Judgment. Okay, what is it? And you just dig. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I know where that's from. And when you start learning all these things, that is the biggest key, because now I know who I am. So if you question me, I know who I am. So it doesn't matter, because that's just your opinion, because I know who I am.
I feel attacked. I feel a bit attacked.
He's like, oh my gosh, it wasn't me.
I was just about to slide across to you then, Jess. I was slightly worried. So what sort of exercises can people do if we cover that sort of topic? So people are sat home and thinking, right,
self-aware.
How do you make yourself self-aware? What sort of questions do you need to be asking yourself? Is it a pen and paper job, and start jotting it down? One
of the very first things is, because this is one activity that I give everybody. This is how we always start it.
Yeah, that's how I actually met her. We did a webinar. She did one, and she keep a paper. I'm going to list 10 things that you think matter so much to you, or just think
values.
Play a part in your life, right? They put a plus sign next to it, put a minus. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Put a plus sign next to it, put a minus sign next to it, and go. Okay, so for example, friendship, all right? If you had more of friendship from your friends, would you be happier, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, would you be happier? If your friendship was reduced, for example, me and you, George, we don't talk anymore, would that make me sad?
Yes.
Yes.
Tick.
Questionable.
Right. Check mark on that one. That's a 10.
Yeah, questionable. All right. I've ditched them a couple of times. No, but that's.
But this is part 2, because this had to do with business. The thing is, you have to know yourself you need to align the business to who you are, right?
Yeah.
So the first activity I always give people when they come in, I'm like, I'm going to give you 1 minute, just 1 minute. And I want you to just list I am, and then all the words that just start coming up. Do you know how many times I have people sit there for the full minute and they can only write 3 things?
Wow.
I was trying to do the exercise in my head then briefly, and I probably would have done the same.
You're like, But that just shows you there's nothing wrong with it, of course. Self-awareness comes with knowing and then doing something about it. Some people have positive and negative stuff that they write on it. So then I know exactly where to take them, because then they own those titles, or they own that. And then obviously that's a block, or it's affecting them. But in that, let's say you only got 3 in there. You don't really know yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you have to, and that's the thing, that's the core of who you are. You have to know that. Because when you come to situations where people question you, society questions you, your boss questions you, you know that from the inside, and that can't rock you. It happens on the outside, but you're so solid on the inside that you're just like, look, if you're going to fire me, go ahead. But I know that I'm valuable. And when I go somewhere else, they're going to appreciate me.
Yeah, but that's such a tricky, well, that's such a catch-22 situation.
Such a grey area, isn't it, at the moment? I'm like, please, I want to keep my job. I know I'm good.
Well, that's the thing. It's because it's one of my mates here. He works in Mushrook Bank, yeah. So he had enough. He said, I'm done, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to force you to change my department because I want to go there. And he goes, listen, I'm done. Throws the, I quit letter on the thing. And the guy says, okay, cool, thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed your work. And my friend goes, what? Sorry, what? No, but he's like, no, it's all right. You can go. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Just, you can stay. Give me a 1 month notice. So literally, he's messaging us on WhatsApp saying, listen, what do I do? I'm like, bro, you wanted to quit. It's fine. You know, you would get something. You're like, no, just you don't know what you're talking about. You chat shit. So I'm like, okay, cool. Do whatever you want to do.
That's a power move, I think, between the...
I'm just going to say, you know what? Sometimes you got to do stuff like that pushes you into situations that you didn't think of. That's how I started my HR business. It was just out of curiosity. I was like, I met in a motivational speaker during my master's program, and he had all these businesses. Young guy, like 33. I was like, dude, how do you have a restaurant, a nail salon, this, that, a mortgage company? That, like, do you sleep? And I asked him, like, I just want to understand, like, what do you have that, like, I want some of that. And then during the conversation when I met with him, he's like, you know, you could do consulting. You have it. And I'm like, no, I don't. I love my job. Like, I want to have like this salary, like the secure salary. And he's like, no, you're bigger than that. You just don't know it. And it was like that. Oh my gosh. Somebody else believes in me more than I do. And he was the one that like said, listen, you need to quit your job. You hate it anyway. They don't pay you what they should. Get out. And for him, it was so easy. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. But I did. But you know what? When I did, that same day at a dinner, I got my first client.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. So it comes down to mindset. That's what I want to keep going back to this. I want to keep peeling that onion here. Yeah.
What about if someone doubts you, though? I mean, I you know, an interview process. So you go through an interview, you're going for a bigger role. You're proper stepping up to the plate, and you believe that you are the right person for that job. But you know, through this 3-stage process with different people in interview, you get people go, my reservations are X, Y, and Z. You know, you haven't really got that much experience in that, and you know, I mean, that's going to knock your confidence. So then, if you actually do get offered the job, how do you take yourself out of that rut? Because you think, well, there's actually people in the business that don't think I've got the minerals.
But I think we go back to what she said. Yeah, it's the mindset thing where you go, if you're self-aware of what hurts you, no one else's words would hurt you as much, right? It's your own words that would be...
You own your weakness. Like, I know I'm not good with numbers. So if somebody were to tell me, you suck at numbers, like, it's not going to affect me because I own it. So you kind of like neutralize the situation.
But see, we talk about numbers, we talk about these things, but what if it's a personal... so it's not... So, look, you suck at numbers, or you suck at being a general manager or whatever. That's understandable. You can go past that because these are...
My confidence is gone now because I'm stepping up to a general manager position.
No, but good stuff. We have got...
Thanks, Jazz.
Yeah, no, but good stuff. Right. We've got confidence catalyst here.
That's right.
Just want the floor to swallow me up now.
Oh, you're like, please. It all comes back to mindset because you know what? Look, in an interview, if they say, you know what, we still have some reservations about you and we're not thinking this and that. Do you know what? Now that's like an opportunity for you to challenge yourself. Be like, you know what? I'm going to give it all I got. Because then if I do that and I still, let's say I end up like, okay, yeah, you need to get out. At least you gave it all you got. And you got to be in that position and understand, you know what? Actually, I thought I could. I do need to work on X, Y, Z. But now you know. And awareness, knowledge, all of this starts coming in and you start understanding a little bit more about it. Can't beat yourself. I mean, obviously you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But you can, but you have to like at some point be like, okay, enough. We got to move on from this.
I do think sometimes there's maybe an element of reverse psychology there. I had a boss many years ago, and he said to me, he became my boss. And then he said, if I'd interviewed you, I wouldn't have hired you.
Oh, wow.
That's what he said to me.
Really?
And then he said, he said, no, not here.
Oh, okay.
Back in the UK. He said, you know, I felt you're probably a bit young, but inexperienced. And I was. You know, I was going from an internal sales position to an external. And he said it to me. But then in my head, and the way I would look at it is that positive. I'd be like, right, I'm gonna show you.
I'm gonna show you.
Well, see, that's I think that's the key part. It's that little mindset that you have, right, where you change. So when I started my first business, I was 24. But the only reason I started the business is because I knew people in the industry, right? So I'm like, I know people. I can get contracts. I can outsource the thing. I can just be the Uber of my business, right? It's not easy, all right? So, but what I've done now, like, it's taken me years to get to this point where I'm like, I don't give a shit what you say about me, right? I might not deserve to be in this room according to you, but I'm going to give my best, more than my best, to convince you that I deserve to be in this room. I might not, look, 6 CEOs, I'm not a CEO, for example, no experience, I don't deserve to be there. That's true. But I'm going to try my best to make sure that you think the opposite. That's where I've come to a point now. And that's what I want to push with you as well. It's how often do you find people like this where they're on the precipice of being great, but they don't know yet? How do you talk to these people then? How do you go on? Let's go back to that little paper pen thing that we spoke about earlier, because I want to push a bit more into that one.
The thing is that you have to know where you are and where you want to go. If you know that, then you can create an action plan of how to get there. So it depends what area of your life too. You know, if it's dating, for example, you know, you're like, oh, I'm not good enough to date that one or that one. And you're like, oh man, hell no. You know what? I had to change that real quick. I was like, no, I know what I bring to the table. But your energy shows that 100%. Like, and I could see the difference in like, you know, but then again, it's all perspective, because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I should be like a supermodel to date that kind of guy and that kind of guy. And I'm like, why am I putting this guy on a pedestal? Like, I know I'm a badass because if I know what I bring to the table.
So, okay, so just a quick, I love it.
I love that.
I love it.
Because I sometimes go into scenarios and I'm
honestly,
like, I know what I bring to the table.
Yeah, right.
You've just looked at me like that.
Yeah. You're like, just wait. Just wait, girl.
You watch this.
No, but this is years of practice, right? From your end.
No way.
No.
Not years. Not years.
Okay.
Once you figure out where your issue is and you like change that shift, like you make the shift, you start practicing it.
Brilliant.
I'm not going to tell you that the first time, you know, I was like, this guy, and then I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Oh shoot, he didn't call me back. Then you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said all that. But you know what? After that, I was like, okay, there's something else in me that is doing something. And you know what? It was back to what is it that I value in myself? I value commitment. I value honesty. I value humor. And they don't bring that. I'm like, yeah, they're a successful lawyer with a, you know, Lamborghini driving down, but he's a douche. Like, I don't want that.
Just for the camera purposes, right? Nancy had a little blip there, right?
What sort of blips? I'm liking it. Go with it.
No, but I love that.
But you know, you have to own your worth, and it shows in your energy. You don't even have to say anything. And I've tested this so many times, even in networking, where I'm like, okay, before I network, gosh, I'm going to spill all my beans here. Dang it. So before I go networking, I'm like, I already know nobody's here. Like, nobody knows me. So what am I going to do? So I start outside and I'm like, all right, I'm going to vision. So I'm going to visualize myself in there. Who am I? I'm the CEO. Let's say I'm freaking Oprah and I make millions. I have $1 million in my bank account. How do I walk in there? How do I look? How do I feel?
Beyonce's music in the back, right?
yeah, right.
Girls run the world.
We run the world.
Yeah.
But you know, I visualize that and I feel it. So not just visualize it. I feel what it feels like. Take 3 deep breaths and then I walk in the room. I don't even say anything. And most of the time I will have people coming up to me like, who are you?
Yeah,
like, you're funny because who are you? And I'm like, nobody. But I've been testing it, like, just to kind of get the feeling of, is this really true? Like, does somebody pick up your energy like when you're in the room without having to say anything? Because it's definitions. You might think confidence means something. You might think it's something else. For me, it's a completely different thing. So then, but we're all measuring it from like, oh, can they walk up and talk to everybody in front of the room? But I could be confident sitting in the back, observing.
Yeah. Well, now, this is the funny part, right? Confidence, arrogance, thin line. Right? Thin line. Right? So how do you differentiate there? So, for example, like you said, he thinks confidence is this, I think this. You walk in, he thinks, oh, what a confident lady. I think, what an arrogant lady. So how do you what's the difference in these two here? How do you separate these two from each other?
They're actually very, very different. Okay. So it's the intention behind it.
Right.
When I walk into the room, I'm not thinking, and I'm better than everybody here.
Yeah, but they don't know that though.
No, this is all here.
Yeah.
Right? This is all here. So it's the intention behind when I walk into the room. If I were to do it, and I would probably test it and be like, you know what? I'm better than everybody here. And I walk into the room, people will feel that without even me needing to say anything, and just walking in there, because your vibe when you walk somewhere, you give it off. Seriously, like.
I love that.
It's true.
It's like desperation trying to sell something.
Oh. Yeah.
You know, people are like, I know I've got him over a barrel. He's going to drop his pants.
Exactly. It's true though. Like girls all the time, you know, and they're like, oh, I went on a date. This is like my 10th date. And I'm like, you're so desperate because now you're so focused on them that you've lost yourself. Like you've lost the reason why you should even be there. And that's the thing, is that we keep taking that highlight away from ourselves, and like we highlight everybody else. I mean, look at the social media.
Oh wow, that is a chest of treasure that we were going to keep till the end of the episode, right? But social media, please.
Comparison. I mean, I even fall into it, and this is the thing. Just because you have that confidence doesn't mean that it never gets tested. Because that was like a big one. Like in LA, I got to the point where I could call anywhere, anyone, and I was like, do you know anybody here? Yep, go here. Hey, red carpet events, boom. Because it just that vibe that you're like, I get to meet people, and it was all exciting. And then I moved here and I was like, nobody knows me here. That took a big kick to my confidence, where I'm like, now I have to prove myself, like like I don't know anybody here. Now I have to, and then I became the little, like the new girl on the block mentality. So any event I went to, I was like, oh, I'm honored that you're speaking to me, you know, that kind of energy. And I would get home and feel like crap. And I was like, I lost my edge, man. I'm like, what is it that I'm missing out on? So I had to work on myself. I'm like, wait, hang on a minute. My network doesn't define me. I define me. And so I started working on myself. Like I was like, all right. And it changed the way that I approached people. I'm like, I deserve to be here just as much as you do. You've been here for 20 years. That's great.
Well, that's exactly what I said earlier about the room that you get in, right? But I love that because I've actually told my sister this a couple of times as well. But like, listen, if he's being, pardon my French, a douche, like you said, all right, that's not because it's your fault, all right? It might be. We don't know. I don't know what the context is, but you can't let that affect you in the long run. That should not be the reason why you doubt yourself. Especially, I've said this before, to literally anyone who would listen. Not many people listen to me. That's a problem, right? Is don't let the other person dictate your self-worth in a situation, right? I can go up to my mum right now, or I call my mum, I would feel on top of the world, because that's what she would make me feel like. She'll make me the star of her
show.
Yeah, she would. Right? And that is that feeling that that's the one I want to talk about, is how do you cultivate that? That's the one that you want to go, I want to feel like that 9 out of 10 days. It's not easy, right? This is where the self-aware part comes in.
But doesn't upbringing have an influence in that? Because, my parents are very much the same. They're always kind of...
Mine are not.
...getting behind. So I've had that, that constant lift from them. So, and some people don't. I mean, does that have a huge impact? Well,
yeah, because that's a supportive side. That you do have to have a support team or a support system around you. And that's great. Like, I didn't have that, which is why I had to learn the hard way. Or along the way, but it made me who I am, because I mean, it made me even go in the direction of HR, which is not something I wanted to do. But because I had told my mom, Mom, I want to do like broadcasting and like this and that. And she was like, no.
Yeah, be a doctor.
Not you.
I always, I find it funny whenever I see a young child, I don't know, that's had a camera put in front of them, an American. They just seem like they should all be on camera. I don't know what it is. There's something about them. You could have a television, the BBC, with the presenter and the mic interviewing a young child,
right?
And it's like it was something they were born to do. It just, I don't know. It just seems the case. Unless it's a setup and they found the best one. I don't know.
It's a great social identity,
right?
Which is great, right?
Yes, but honestly, at the end of the day, it does impact, though. You might learn a little bit later, but then at the same time, you may then learn to be independent. and learn from, which is, I took it in that direction where I was like, look, I'm never going to get my parents' support. I'm never going to be good enough. They want me to live a certain lifestyle that is completely different than who I am. I already know that. But did my other siblings? Maybe
So
they decided.
Are you the oldest? Are you the
I am.
Oh, so, yeah, that's the hard job right
Oof.
there. Yeah,
And what
yeah.
sort of path have they taken? Have they gone something similar to you or completely different?
Completely different. Completely different. Kids, my sister's in the army. So
wow.
everybody's completely different, separate. But at the same time, I've been the rebel. Like to this day, my dad says, oh my gosh, like the things you make these women do in our family. And I'm like, no, because I'm not okay with that. Like since I couldn't remember, I'm like, no, dude, you cannot just come into this house and expect us to like, oh, like you are our master. And he's like,
family gatherings must be awkward. Be like, is Auntie Nancy coming? Like, yeah, she is. Oh no, we don't need to go today, all right? Listen, you stay at home.
Thankfully, my dad has completely changed. He was probably my worst critic. Like anything I did, bad. Like I was like, I called you at 8:00 at night. Where were you? I was having a dinner meeting with a group of executives. You see? Stuff like that. That's why you're not married. What? Like, does it make you happy? Like, is it like, I'm happy that you're doing what you love? It was never like that. Even when I went for my master's, he's like, just another piece of paper. And I'm like, are you serious? Then I was like, okay, all right, you watch me. You watch and see what I do.
So now the funny thing is, right? I'm getting flashbacks on my household sometimes, right? when you speak like this. But let's not get into that conversation. Leave that for off camera. I want to go back to that little section where you said, look, in this case, you can automatically go in the opposite direction where your dad or your mum goes, what are you doing? Where are you? Come back home, do this. You can automatically go in a shell, right? You went in that opposite direction, said, why? Some cases what happens is, how do you get out of that then? If you go back into that little shell and saying, oh shit, my dad doesn't believe me anymore, then how do you go back to that little state that you are in now? Because you can't be self-aware at this point, right? You're doubting, your own parents are doubting you, so how do you change that then?
Oh no, I was definitely fully questioning myself, because during that time I didn't have all these tools. I didn't even know I knew something inside of me was like, you're not meant for this. But because of, obviously, we respect our parents. We're like, oh geez. And it's important, we're like acceptance and like all this stuff. They're the ones that we learn it from. So we don't learn any of this stuff like later on. But you know what? I ended up getting married because it was the thing that they wanted me to do to the person that they thought, oh, this would be great. Didn't last long, but I knew, same thing where I was like, why did I do this? Like, this is not what I want for my life. Like, I want to explore. I have something in me that is not this. And I had to make that decision. But you know what? Let me tell you something. Your actions show them at the end of the day. Because I can tell you right now, even my dad, like through everything, he was the one who always criticized. If anything went wrong, you see, that's why. And it was like that consistent, like, damn, like, dude, just please, like, just one time support me. And he never did. Until when he saw me just be in my glory and like, you own it. The business was doing great. I had met my husband, so I was traveling. And just one day he said,
I'm proud of you.
Gosh, I wish I could do what you do. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you love what you do and you're getting to do what you've always wanted. And I said, yeah.
Do you think it helps the traveling? I think everybody should move away. From where they're
yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
So this is what Dubai helps you in terms of multicultural upbringing, where you get to know so many different people. But yes, agree with you. You should be traveling, just meeting new people, so that broadens your horizons, right?
Huge.
So you start talking about, now I want to go back to that little conversation and combine this. Yeah. So we talk about mental health a lot. This could have a negative effect on you mentally, right? It could. So if you're not there 100% mentally, right, you suffer from depression or whatever, then that confidence thing becomes more of a myth.
100%.
Right.
Do you know how many people I've met that are just like, I just exist. Like, I shouldn't have done it. You live with regret. I wish I coulda, woulda, shoulda. But they're too afraid to step out of that comfort zone. It's more important for them to please whoever they are pleasing, whether it's parents, family, tradition, culture, whatever, instead of themselves. And at the end of the day, you have to put yourself first. If you don't know how to do that, you got to find a way to get that. You need to find what is it. I want to put myself first, and not like in a selfish way, like it's only about me, but it's learning how to put yourself first so that your overflow helps everybody else. And that's like the beauty of it, because even throughout all of this, I've been able to help my siblings, in doing what they want to do, but then getting them to think a little bit more. And you know what? It's helping, because now with their kids, they're more self-aware. They know what to talk to them about, how to treat them. Like, it's changed the entire generation. And I'm like, this is awesome. But you know what? There's a whole section of the family that has no idea what I do.
Oh,
my parents still don't know what I do. They're just like, oh, you help people, huh? I'm like, yeah. And they don't really know. They don't know anything.
Well,
it's almost
crazy.
like too scary to like ask, because it's for whatever reason. And even if I explain it, they're just like, ugh, like, because that's in their generation.
It wasn't there. Yeah.
None of this. None of this would happen. So now, like, when I get, like, my husband is British. So to bring a British man into a Mexican household and they have to ask him questions and like do all this stuff. Now their mind has like expanded a little bit, where it was like, oh, in their minds, if you marry within the culture, if you do this, if you do that, that's the right way. But then they see me and they're like, she's so happy. She's so in love. Like, she gets to experience the world. Now that curiosity is like sparked in them. Like,
I love that. I mean, it's the fact that you've taken control of your life and said, I'm going to enjoy this. Even if I wasn't this successful, for example, I am still going to enjoy this. You join me on this ride. Sure, I would be happy. If you don't, I am still going to enjoy this ride. I love that. That's eye-opening a little bit. Right?
Is there a confidence battle between you and your partner? Just out of interest. I'm trying to think. Is he the type of guy who thinks, oh, my wife's very, very confident. I'll just leave her to, she's great in these social gatherings, so she can just crack on and do that. Or is it a face-off?
Yeah, is it a face-off?
face-off?
Where he goes once in a while, be like, Nancy, listen, I know what I got to do, all right? You got to let me do this. She's laughing. I like that.
Nah, he knows that she's just going to do her thing. It's very different cultures, number one. So it happened actually the very first time that I went to the UK, and he like invited like 20 of his friends to come over. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. And it's very overwhelming. Everybody's looking at you and you're just like, what am I going to say? What if they don't like me? The culture, I mean, everything. But I was like, no, do not forget who you are, Nancy. I was like, all right. Got this. I got this. Walked into the room, talked to everybody, conversations with everybody, giggling over here, doing that, doing this. I hadn't even seen him like all night. And then finally towards the end, he's like, man, where have you been all night? I was like, well, I've just been chatting around with your friends. And oh God, he's like, you're so good at that. Like you just merge in and you just kind of like do your thing. And then when he came over to visit my friends in LA, and he got like really shy and like quiet. And unless somebody came to him, he was talking and he was like, I just can't do that. Like, I cannot do that. And I was like, we started talking, we have really great conversations, and it goes back to awareness. So we're like, I'm like, why can't you just be you? And he's like, I think growing up British, it's always like, you're like this and don't be too much. And don't, and it's like that constricted thing. And he's like, you're just like, you just do you. So, and I'm like, yeah, like,
isn't
come on.
Isn't that a bit of American as well? I mean, that's a bit of a American thing as well. Be like, I am out there. I don't care. Right?
I mean, that is part of it, but it is generation. Like, even when I'm thinking of his, like, he would tell me, oh, like, don't hug. Like, we're not huggers. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Who isn't a hugger?
Yeah, who's a hugger?
No. So when I met his parents, it was like, hi, nice to meet you. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? He walked into my house. My mom's like, hi. And, dad's like, hey. So it's very different.
I love it though. Like, I love the fact that you are, again, it comes back to, we keep coming back to that word. I love it now. I think it's going to be my word of the day, self-aware. If you're self-aware about how you are going to, you don't care what the other person thinks and you're self-aware about that's a game changer. I want to touch quickly on the topic of social media. I know we can go for another 2 hours for social media. We've had conversations with a couple of mental health experts as well, and they touched on social media, how good it has been for people and bad at the same time. Now, in your field of work, if you're talking to a young girl, how does social media play? What kind of part do they play in their life?
Before you go there, what's the spectrum? Are we talking right the way from businessmen down to young individuals?
So I have everything from a 13-year-old to a director at a bank.
Okay, well, so I want to go on a more of a general consensus. I don't want to go specific to it. I want to know. I've had this issue, by the way. So I've had my confidence thing. Cool. I know who I am, but I go on social media, and it does come to me at a point. I'm like, I've been gymming as much as that guy. Like, why do I not look like that? I've been eating the same way. Why do I? And then I automatically go, it's shit. I shouldn't be thinking like this. But that's because I question that, right? But there are people that don't, and that affects them. What? It affects them. Yeah. It's
massive. It affects me. I had to really sit down with myself. Like when I got here, all of a sudden I'm like, how are all these women they look perfect? And I'm like, I don't look like that. And I've been working out. I eat healthy. What kind of BS is this? And then, you have to remember the tool, social media, you're highlighting the best of the best. Yeah. You are never going to put gosh, I was crying my head off because, whatever, my boyfriend left me. No, you're going to post when you're out with your girls looking fabulous. No one's ever going to know that you're suffering.
It's a photo shoot before you go out.
It is honestly. So you have to really get into okay, let's look at what we have, the facts. This is a platform where people are only highlighting the best of their life.
Right. Snippets.
Yeah. So then you kind of have to, perspectives. You start, okay. When it starts getting into comparison, I did that. I'm like, how is this lady walking out, every photo shoot, she has a different bag. I'm like, am I not making enough to be balling like that? And then, you start questioning yourself. But it goes back to, I have my own journey. Why am I comparing myself to her? Right. She's been in business for 10 years. I've been in business for 2 or whatever, so you start and you don't know what somebody's journey is. So every time I catch myself where I'm like, oh, that lady again, I'm like, oh, hang on. But that's not my journey. Awesome. Yay for her or him. But I got my own journey. I need to focus on mine.
I love that. I think don't compare someone else's 10th step to your second, or someone's 100th step to your 10th.
Yep.
That could be your end goal, but understand, like you said, you've got your own steps to take as well.
I think everyone's got their own problems as well. I always look at someone, I think, they look fantastic. There's something wrong there. I'm always like, there's something not right. Yeah, it does. Yeah, 100%. I'm like, yeah, he looks fantastic. Nah, there's something not right somewhere, and I just can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, maybe he's got squeaky voice. All right.
I thought you were going to say something else.
No. PG-13s. All right. Keep it. Yeah, we've got kids listening to this show as well.
This is so funny, hilarious. No. But you know what? It does go back to it, and I'll tell you why. What? I have a very, very young client, teen. Every time we have sessions, it's about social media. Why don't I look like her? Why can't I be like that? And this needs to be taught in school.
Yes.
I'm like, I wish I knew this in school because I would do things completely different. And so I'm working with her, but the changes that are coming in, and it's they don't know who they are because all they have is the external. But you have to realize there's studies on this all the time. And they've done it where they put a group of people in the room, they give them a magazine of just models and GQ magazine people and all that, and they're looking, and when they rate themselves like super low. They do the same group at another time, and they do a magazine of just every kind of person, every color and flavor and size, and they rate themselves higher. So it's what are you looking at that is creating that comparison? I always ask if something triggers you, it's because there's something in you. Right?
Look in yourself first before you go and looking into other people's basket, right? That's the...
You have to, because everybody is a mirror for you, right? So if there's somebody on social, and this would happen to me all the time. Anytime I saw a girl just having to be like the attention, and she has to always be the one that has to get all the guys on her, I was like, oh, can't you just sit down? Like, just chill.
So Friday night brunch, basically. Right?
So, you're kind of like, Mike, and then I was like, wait, but why does that trigger me?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me look into this a little bit more. And as I do it for myself, I start journaling. I'm like, but why? Why does that trigger me? It's because of this. Oh.
So why does it trigger you?
It used to trigger me because
So why?
I'm like, I have to be a certain way for people to like me.
Okay.
So then I put that restriction on myself. So seeing them get to be whoever they want to be with no restrictions and who cares what everybody thinks, it would trigger me because that was an insecurity that I had in me, that I was like, I just want to be me. I don't have to I don't want to be like, oh, I have to sit like
Social
this.
boxes, that's what I said earlier.
Exactly. So I'm like, so if something triggers me, now instead of it being like, gut, now I'm like, okay, why is that triggering me? Like, there's a reason that's bugging me.
Well, she might have her own little insecurities, right? Which you project your insecurities onto that person, where you go, why is she like this and not this way? Instead of thinking maybe she's going through something else as well. We don't know what that is. Him, her, whatever the situation is. Oh man, this is it's eye opening. That's for sure.
And another thing is, if certain accounts are triggering you, like that you're consistent, like for example, like the guys with the Ferraris and then the watches and all that, and you're just like, man, why are you following them?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
Unfollow.
Yeah. Or just don't like pictures like that, because that's the algorithm, right? So when you like a picture, it keeps coming back again. But again, it's a funny thing.
But it's in your feed. Unfollow.
Yeah.
Why are you unfollow? Like, what? When I see people like, oh, haters. I'm like, dude, why are you following them then? If they bug you so much, just
I used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
I used to bite a lot at social media. So people would comment something, I would disagree, and then I started thinking, I'm like, why am I doing this? What if there is 0.1% chance of me convincing the other person that your opinion is not valid, right? Because of this data, whatever, then okay, I can have a normal conversation with you. But on social media, that's not the case, though, is it? It's more of a, pardon my French again, I'm bigger, you're bigger, all right?
I just don't like to feed the machine. I had a situation, I put a post up, I was frustrated about something, and I put a post up on Facebook, and then I jumped on a flight for 8 hours, and then I switched it back on. And oh my God, people started attacking me basically.
What was this?
I'm not going to go into it because at the time, okay, I look at it afterwards and I think, yeah, okay, maybe. But then someone said to me, you should have just stood up and owned it, and that's what I should have done. I should have gone, there's a reason why I posted that.
You're driving to the skid.
And this is why. But yeah, so that my experience, as I tend to not feed it. I don't feel I need to comment on anybody's unless it's positive. Yeah,
well, that positive affirmation is always good. But I actually want to go back to Nancy's point about trends, social media trends, right? So this is what this is. A couple of years ago, when what's the Victoria's Secret came out? No, a couple of years ago, ages ago, in the 90s, tall, thin, fit, gymming, right? Now it's more of a Kim K trend, which is bustier,
voluptuous.
Yeah. That's the trend. So I keep telling people this as well. I don't know if you agree on this. It's don't base your life on trends, right? Trends will come and go, irrespective of who you are. You could be 10 years old now. You could be, by the time you're 30 or 20, 18. All of this could change. So it's important to differentiate between trends and lifestyle choices, right? So
yes, I mean, look at like 1920s. The bodies of women were totally different.
Right.
Then you go into 1930s, totally different. Like what was fantastic when they were thin, and then when they were bigger, like it changes so much. Yeah, exactly. But if you go based off of that. That's the thing though, is, are you happy? Like if you're happy by being a little bit heavier, who cares? Like, all right, hey, I'm happy, I'm healthy. I mean, in my own way, that's fine. Like, own it. Like I've seen some big girls and they own it. They're like, this is who I am. And it exudes out of them, where I'm like, not once does it come into my mind like, gosh, like, you know, maybe they need to, never, because you know what? They just own it. They're like, yep, this is who I am.
Confidence is a drug. The more you do it, the more you want it more. So
it's a life. Honestly, it's you do breathe it and you do live it and you do, but it's always you have to understand, you go through different levels in life, right? So what the confidence that you need in this life, in this level of life or in this phase
might not be the same
in the next one. And then when you go into the next phase, you have to realize you think you're at zero again, because you're like, oh man, this is something new, a new phase, whether it's a new relationship, new job, new whatever. That transition requires a different level of it. So the only way to take care of that is, what's the changes that are happening? What's the self-awareness? I need to work on this. Cool. I want to work on that. But every level of it has
something. So you mentioned tools to make yourself a bit more self-aware. I want to touch on spirituality. Or you did mention that you you did that in the webinar as well. So I just want to talk a bit more. How important is spirituality? Just not just spirituality in general. The fact that you have to, just pray, have music on, like music. How important is that to?
Massive.
To confidence. Oh, okay.
Whatever religion, whatever anything, as long as you believe that there's a higher power, whether you call it universe, source, divine, God, whatever you call it, as long as you know that there's a higher power, it's very important, because then when you're at your like lowest point, you can reach out to, in that sense where you're like, okay, I need help from that. In the sense of that, for me, it's been probably the most important.
And how long do you have a session every day where you
I meditate almost daily. I don't want to say daily because there's some days where I don't, but I meditate almost daily. And it's getting into that space of the intention for the day. How do I want to feel for the day? Or whether, like, sometimes the night before, maybe there was something that I saw that I'm like, oh, it didn't make me feel good. I have to let that go. Either meditation or journaling. Sometimes I'm like, I can't deal with meditation right now. And I'll journal. Like, I'll just, an outpour of like feelings. If it's at a point where it's like really, really negative, like where I'm like, okay, this is like, I'm angry and frustrated, I'll just pull all my feelings out, and then I end up burning the paper, like, because I don't want that energy inside of me. I don't want it in me, but it's a release. It's almost like a ritual, that your brain is like, oh, I'm feeling this. And then when you write it, your brain is like, oh, it's now outside of me. And then you burn it, and in your mind, it's like, oh, it's leaving. So it's something in your brain that just releases that, like, it almost has to see that ritual happen for it to go. And I can honestly tell you that has been probably one of the best things ever, because I don't stay with that yucky feeling of, I don't like this, because then it just hurts you at the end of the day.
I've never meditated, but what sort of thought processes would you put yourself through during a meditative state?
It could be the easiest thing. If you know what, if you want to work on, I just want to feel happy for today. You getting yourself 3 deep breaths. This is like the easiest thing. 3 deep breaths, you do it consciously, and then you start thinking of visually, what would make you happy? And you start taking the thought. So let's say you start thinking, oh, I don't know, my girlfriend. And then you start thinking of that, like, oh, or my mom, or I remember that one time when this happened. And then your mind just starts going and going and going. And then I anchor that feeling. And by anchoring, I mean, like, once the thought has been going for, like, let's say 30 seconds, and I'm like, I can feel like, oh, like I feel happy. Then I'm like, from the top of my head, it's like I drop the anchor, like, through the top of my head to, like, the center of the earth. I anchor the feeling, and I'm like, okay, that's my intention for the day.
I do that in the shower.
Do you?
Yeah. So you completely blank out, right? So hot water in the thing, and you're just like, ooh. that was a heavy
Do you think
day.
we all naturally meditate anyway? Because that's a very valid point. I think sometimes when you could be in the shower, you're in the room on your own, and you've
But
just got
who
the running
says that
water.
you have to be like sitting down doing, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's
no,
the problem, isn't it?
honestly,
You
you know,
always
when you're
associate
sitting
it.
and you're like,
I love the little.
It's true though, isn't it? Because you
Honestly.
associate it with like Aladdin sitting on a carpet or something.
Again, see this. I do not condone this, all right? Just because I've got. No, I don't. I'm joking. But it's not. Yeah, I get this. Look, Sikhism is built on spirituality, right? We base our entire religion on this part, right? So, yeah, it doesn't have to be like this. I've told my dad so many times, I don't need to say thank you to, again, God, Jesus, whoever you want to call it, right? Whoever you pray to. I can be driving and have that
Yep.
moment of clarity.
yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, and this is, again, it goes back to, why do you let society define what things mean? You got to take control over that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, success. Like, what does that mean to you? Oh, that I until I have $1 million in my bank account. But what if you're the most miserable person with that $1 million in your bank account? That's not success.
Well, I think there's lots of them.
I'm a ton of people, but again, because you let society define, you let something outside of you define what that means. So when you get to define it, you get to own it, and then you live it every day.
I love that. I'm gonna add a word to that. It's wealth, right? You could be the richest person in the world, but not wealthy. You could be wealthy, but not the richest person. It works both ways, right? Your wealth could be your family. Your wealth could be your dog, for example, right? It could be, and I love that. I think, Nancy, that has been a massive exclamation point to this brilliant podcast. I love it. The whole concept of being self-aware to understand where you should be in this moment of life is exactly where you should be, right? Not a step forward, not a step backward, exactly where you should be. And that clarity is just absolute gold, right? I can't think of any better word there.
So one of the things we do, Nancy, at the end of a podcast is we ask the guest, is there anything that you would like to say that we haven't asked
Go Los
and
Angeles.
you would like to put out to the world?
Put out to the world. You know what? I think at the end of the day, and this is something like a deep, deep thing that for me, I'm like, it's so important. When you find yourself, you start moving in that direction, and the choices that you make end up aligning with everything of who you are. So you start aligning everything around you from like the core of who you are. So for all of those people who need to kind of like, okay, something just doesn't feel right, or I need something different, you always got to go back to you, because you're the one who created, you're the one who did this. So it's finding yourself again, and it changes everything. And from that, like, you know, even like with the podcast that I started, same thing, like it was from a meditation. Just like, I want to serve. I am a serving person. Like, I love helping people and transforming and all that. So how do I get to do that during COVID? I was like, oh my gosh. And then it just happened to come through meditation, but it's in that moment of silence. Sometimes you need that. You need to get all the distractions out, phones, TV, everything, and just sit with yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start doing that. Just one day or 3 hours. Let's start small steps. Yeah, 1 hour. Put my phone aside. Put on silent. Doesn't matter who calls. I'm going to try doing that. If you have any questions and if you want to get in touch with Dr. Nancy, please drop us a message, drop us a comment, or just get in touch with Dr. Nancy straight away. We will share her contact details, our Instagram and a podcast on our thing as well. We look forward to hearing confidence issues from you guys a lot more. I'm joking. Confidence questions, that's what I meant.
Confidence questions, yeah.
And Nancy, you've got a podcast as well.
I do.
What's it called?
The Art of Being You.
Okay, fantastic. And you've done 10.
10
funny,
episodes,
like we were saying earlier,
guys.
10 episodes, and we're on the 10th episode. So
I was actually proud of myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've done 10. But, you know, it's something where I'm like, this is a journey. Same thing with comparison, where you're like, oh my gosh, somebody else has like 1,000. They're like celebrating our 1,000,000th download. And I'm like, dang.
Oh yeah, that happens to me a lot, by the way. I research podcasts for this as well, just to learn and listen to podcasts. And I'm like, oh man, that guy's got 1,000 downloads just yesterday. how am I competing with this? There are a million podcasts out there. Why would someone listen
But
to
he's
this?
probably been doing it for years, though. I think.
There you go. So that's, even if he's not doing it for the years, what I've realized again, especially over the past 1 hour that we've been talking, right, is the fact that this is your journey is completely separate from that person's, right?
Stay consistent.
There's 8 billion people in the world. I think more now, but there are 8 billion people in the world, right? So you have enough out there to be successful, to be your own person. So there's no rush. Everyone wants to be Jeff Bezos. Everyone wants to be with Elon Musk. But what they don't realize is you don't have to be that to be happy, right? So that's one of the biggest things that's happened to me this year, is that realization. Be like, listen, just breathe, learn to enjoy the roses while you go to your
through the path. Yeah,
enjoy, smell the roses, have a look, and yeah. Nancy, this has been a brilliant podcast. I've enjoyed every single minute of it. I hope you have as well.
Yes, it's been fun, guys.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Awesome.
Oh, brilliant.
And taking you away from your partner. Sorry about
I'm sure
that.
you appreciate it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks for listening, guys.